Hey folks, and welcome to the 1989 NES project. This is the 5th video in the series. You don't have to have watched the others to enjoy this one, but it might be useful to track the development and evolution of popular game genres on the console, as well as my personal tastes, as I play through everything that was released in North America for the NES year by year. This video follows a similar format as the others. I played through 1989's games in order of release. I played each game for around 10 minutes, wrote down my thoughts and feelings on the play experience, turned it into a video, and stitched them all together, creating the monstrosity you see before you. Then I rank my favorites for the year before looking back over the project and talking about what to expect in the 1990 video. Each game covered gets around 1 to 2 minutes on average, so watch one at a time, a handful at once, or binge the whole thing in one go. Viewer's choice. Now, at the end of the 1988 video, I did say that there was going to be 97 games I played for 1989, and yet this video covers only 96? What happened? It turns out 2 of the games mentioned separately on my list of game releases came bundled together on the same cartridge. Technically, I did cover both, but I counted them as the same game. Aside from that, 1989 has a lot to offer. There's a huge release from Nintendo called Tetris. Maybe you've heard of it. Capcom made a sequel to Mega Man. Tecmo released Ninja Gaiden. And Chunsoft kickstarted the JRPG genre with Dragon Warrior. We have ports of PC and arcade games, strategy games, game show adaptations, and plenty of weird platformers. Quite a few titles play with mixing genre, trying new things from level to level. And yes, I am including the sizable quantity of minigame collections under that umbrella. It's a year of ups and downs, so without further ado, let's start the 1989 NES project off by talking about Bomberman. Listen to how cool the sound effects for the bomb explosions are. Douche! Having played many versions of Bomberman over the years, especially those with multiplayer mayhem baked into them, this original NES outing is bare bones by comparison. The bombs have such a short range, and I found it difficult to trap the enemies in their blast radius. One neat thing is that the blocks are placed randomly each new life. There are power-ups hidden in their blocks, but they're not at all common. I got one, and it allowed me to place more bombs. It was needed because not only do you have to kill every enemy before the timer runs out, but you need to uncover the door to the next level too. I found the door to level 2 with less than 10 seconds left. Yeesh! Cool music and premise, but I'd much rather play what the series turned into years down the road. It'd be easy to act snide towards this game, but honestly, I think it's great for what it's trying to do. This is for young children. It's to help them recognize and piece together shapes and count simple numbers. Yes, for someone our ages, it's mind-numbingly easy and slow, but we're not the target audience. What made me appreciate this is how much care has been put into the visuals and music, and how they've adapted the controls to make it easier for those playing it. The D-pad doesn't actually move up, down, left, or right. Any D-pad press only goes one way as to not confuse the player. So yeah, as edutainment goes, I'm impressed. I don't think this will show up anywhere in my end of video ranking, but could you imagine if 1989 was so terrible that it did? Upon seeing Star Soldier, I wondered if this came out years before in Japan, and was only ported to the US in 1989. I was right. This is a 1986 game. I knew it had to be. It's too primitive compared to the shoot-em-ups I played in the 1988 video. That doesn't mean it's bad. Actually, I enjoyed myself. I just found it confusing. Sometimes I'd be flying underneath the scaffolding instead of over it, unable to shoot at anything until my ship came back out the right side. A lot of the environment is destructible, but apart from noticing power-up blocks popping up every now and then that either release a ship upgrade or a screen-clearing bomb, it was all I could do to stay alive, as the weird shapes bombarded me with their firepower and presence. Another point of note is the brain at the end of the level. If you don't destroy it quickly enough, it escapes and you have to go through the whole level again. When I finally understood how to upgrade my ship, I was fortunate enough to grab enough upgrades to activate Awesome Mode. I call it this because the music changed and I was shooting in all directions like a deadly kaleidoscope. I'd think higher of Star Soldier if I'd played it back in the 1986 video and not seen how this genre has continued to evolve in the years after. After having so many sports games under my belt this far into the project, I can say for certainty that going against the CPU to learn how to play is the worst way to go about it, even when I like what I'm playing. Tecmo Baseball might be the best baseball game I've played so far. It uses a variation on the odd perspective in bases loaded, but it's a lot easier to hit the ball and I can move my batter around. It seems positioning of both the pitcher and batter is a key part of playing well. I was able to hit the ball, but never to my satisfaction. And of course, when I hit a pop fly, the CPU was already positioned right where the ball would land, whereas I had to scramble to make any simple catch. I also could never work out how to make my runners go to second when I hit it deep in the outfield. The CPU was clowning me when it came to runs, and I never managed to make it on the scoreboard. Like most sports games, I think this would be more fun playing against a friend, but hey, at least Tecmo Baseball has 2 enjoyable music tracks that switch between batting and pitching. This is atrocious. Yeah, it looks and sounds okay, and I like the chiptune version of Real American, but my god is it frustrating and boring to play. There are no real wrestling moves. It's basic attacks, running attacks, and the manual says there's a body slam and turnbuckle moves, but I wasn't able to see them. The best footage I got of the game is flipping around like a lunatic as Bam Bam Bigelow. Here's hoping this is a terrible anomaly for a WWF game and future releases are more enjoyable to play. Golf is supposed to be relaxing, but after a couple holes of hearing that short piece of music loop over and over again, I was ready to throw my virtual clubs in the lake. Bandai Golf looks nice. It relays all the information needed, and even shows elevation up the top. But it doesn't recommend a club for each shot, leaving it up to golfing knowledge or time spent playing the game to know which club is best for which circumstance. Even worse is that I could never tell when I was putting too much power into a swing. I'm sure it's the difference between hitting the ball on rough or a fairway, but sometimes my pitching wedge shots would fly into the air with no distance, and other times they'd soar over the green. Putting is fairly straightforward, and I was able to turn things around on most holes, even getting a par, but I always felt like even with all the information displayed on screen, I was missing something. Bandai Golf? Challenge Pebble Beach indeed. This is actually pretty neat. There's a bunch of campers you can control at different areas around the campsite. You kill zombies to upgrade your weapon, can go into cabins to read notes hinting at what to do next, all the while navigating through woods, over lakes, and even in caves. What I only realized at the end when I looked up and saw that I had no children left is that Jason has been going around offing them behind my back. I guess that's what the incessant beeping was that I learned to ignore as I made my way to the next destination. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to save them when it's so difficult to make my way around the grounds. But I do know that with enough damage, Jason will leave you alone. I ran into him once, and after some attacks, he skedoodled. Now, I was dreading playing this game, partially for it being a horror title, and partially because of its negative reputation. But it does have a lot of interesting ideas, enough to make it a worthwhile play. I think if I knew what I was doing, I would have enjoyed myself even more. Oh, this is kind of like Tempest with better graphics and music. I can dig it. It did take me a while to learn how to do a full loop around the screen using the whole D-pad to make the turn. I wonder if the other control option when I started the game would have made things smoother. It's also pretty easy. I made it to the third stage before I started losing lives. I went to Neptune, then Pluto, and then Uranus. I'm not tripping, right? We never thought that Pluto was before Neptune, right? Maybe this is a different yet eerily familiar solar system that Gyruss takes place in. I also like how if you allow the bugs, or ships, or whatever they are, to fly into the center of the tube, while they can still be shot, they'll change form and be harder to take care of when they decide to poke their head back out again. The spiral pattern, combined with my difficulty in making a full rotation, created most of the challenge, so I'm glad the game was so lenient in its early stages. Auto fire didn't hurt either. Have I talked about how I don't like isometric games? To be honest, I think it all stems from Qbert. One wrong move when you start playing for the first time and you've already kissed a life goodbye. Then, while you're still getting your bearings, the enemies appear. They're relentless. I was so focused on making sure my movement inputs were correct and enjoying the pleasure of turning all the blocks a new color that I would realize I was about to jump into an enemy's path mere milliseconds before I did so. This happened my entire time playing the game, and with the foes becoming nastier, difficulty compounded. There's this little green bastard that changes the color back. I learned later on that you can stomp him to stop his rampage, and there's a P that you can collect to freeze the enemies, but the only reason I found this out is because I was never able to get into a rhythm of avoiding danger while changing block color. I'd really love to play a turn-based version of this and see how it changes things. Anyways, fun premise and presentation, but even after getting a handle on the movement, I still found avoiding the foes while pursuing my goal far too frustrating to enjoy Qbert. I think the designers knew that string of expletives Qbert yells upon each death was the only point I felt the game and I were on the same page. Now this is a fun sports game. I can choose plays, the music is nice, and there's just enough arcade bullpucky to make things interesting. Passing the ball is a dangerous affair. It's so easy to have it intercepted. But then one time, I swear one of my guys just took the ball out of the hands of the opposing team and was able to run with it. Depending on what side you're on, the ability to make a beeline to the end zone without opposition can be exhilarating or terrifying. Sure, there's only 4 plays to choose from, and even on defense the game has you pick from the same plays, but even so, outcomes can change drastically from down to down. The game that got me into Gridiron was NFL Blitz, and the highest compliment I can pay Tecmo Bowl is it feels like a much earlier prototype. For certain genres, my desire to not read the manual before playing can have disastrous effects. Early console RPGs feel like they'd be one of those genres, especially a console port of an Ultima game. To my surprise, that wasn't the case. I mean, if I wanted to continue with the game and know what I was doing, I think reading the manual would be a smart move. But for 10 minutes of coming to terms with what a game is and how it plays, it was easy to interface with. The nuance is in knowing what all the spells do, which shopkeepers are worth buying from, and how to deal with annoyances like getting poisoned. Combat is a turn-based affair, with all characters on the battlefield being allowed one action each. This can be movement or attack. Attacks and magic need to be given a direction. And while I made some mistakes in party layout and not setting myself up strategically, I overcame my first fight. Collecting the loot afterwards is where I got poisoned. Then I went to see the king and tried to cross a tile of water. My whole party drowned. That's the problem with early RPGs. They can be uncompromising in dealing out death and status ailments that lead to death. Now I thought the music was great, and it looks like with party creation, there's lots of options for differing styles of play. I wonder how big the adventure is, and if it's comparable to its PC counterpart. Not bad for my first full-fledged RPG on the console. Will you look at that? A Power Pad game that has the pad on screen, so I can see what buttons I'm supposed to be pressing. Thanks to that, I was able to appreciate what dance aerobics is. Leave it to Nintendo to showcase how to use the wacky peripherals they release for their consoles. This is an early version of Wii Fit. Follow the instructor on screen, stepping on the right pads at the right time, and moving your body like she's moving hers. You could probably get a half-decent workout using this thing if the pad actually registered your movements. I looked around at some of the other game options, and there was making music with the pad, so that's kinda cool. Not enough to want to play more, but hey, small wins, right? I know it's a low bar, but this is by far the best Power Pad game I've played. I wonder if this is as good as it gets. I doubt it's the last Power Pad game of the year, so we'll likely find out soon. This is a great game if you want to hear the soundboard go do-do-do-do-do-do a couple times a minute. It feels that if it had a little more development time, it'd be a decent gridiron game. It's only on the last couple plays that I worked out that I had to hold the throw button to charge the shot, to make a pass more than a couple feet long. Having to point the quarterback in the direction they're throwing the ball makes sense, but with the way the opposing team barrels through the defense, it felt unfair. I'm used to being able to tap the throw button and have it chucked to whoever's free. Tackling and interception felt like a roll of the dice, and while I appreciate more plays to choose from, nothing ever went the way I wanted it to. I mean, look at that score. The visuals are okay, and when the sound isn't playing the same notes over and over again, it's pleasant enough, but I breathed a sigh of relief when my timer went off and it was time to stop playing. And that kinda says everything, doesn't it? Games like Kung Fu Heroes make me think of kids who got this game for their birthday or Christmas and had to play it for 6 months to a year before they might get another. You could really be spinning the roulette wheel on any game before you put it in your NES and played it. This is why rental stores were a godsend. This preamble should tell you how I feel about Kung Fu Heroes. It's not very good. A top-down action game where we get a punch and a somersault stomp. It looks like a game that should have come out in '86 or '87, and boy is the hit detection something special. When trying to land on the jumping pinkish enemies, I got stomped so hard you'd think I was a Goomba in the Mushroom Kingdom. Punching rocks can give punch upgrades and even throwable bombs. These help, but they don't last long, and it cuts out the music. It just doesn't feel good to hit the enemies. And while I learned how powerful the stomp can be, using it to get through a few levels, Kung Fu Heroes never felt good to play. I mean, I did get to see a boss, but it's like I did nothing to it. It ran off screen and the level continued as normal. I never thought I'd see the day I'd prefer to be playing regular Kung Fu. God damn, this is fun. Just don't pick the control option for 45 degrees. That screwed me up big time. I managed to get to the aerial race, but then trying to time my marble so these pylons would launch it over the gap? No chance. What a novel idea for a game. Taking a marble through an isometric obstacle course. The music is great, the hazards are wacky enough, and the sense of relief and accomplishment you feel when you finally make it through a level that's been giving you trouble makes it all worth it. The timer is an omnipresent stressor, but I found by slowing down and trying to eke my way through the twists and turns, I got to the end with plenty of time to spare. Resets end up more hazardous to your health than being methodical in your marble movements. It gets tricky, but it also feels like with enough practice, you'll be able to make it to the end with no problem. I wish I knew about more games that took this idea and ran with it. They gotta be out there, right? There was a moment in the second area of Ninja Gaiden where I died, not knowing how the game wanted me to be able to get through the section. On my next attempt, I made sure to collect all the items in the fireflies around the level, and I must have missed the one that gave me an aura of invulnerability. That happened a couple more times, where the mid-jump spin slash and the flame circle were placed right before moments where they're needed to progress. I think all the times I played this in the past, I thought items were just a bonus, the game being a pure platforming jump and attack extravaganza. No wonder I never got past the second area. Maybe this is easier to recognize with NES games because they're altogether simpler than a lot of modern titles, but Ninja Gaiden makes me wonder if the games we think of as difficult are because most players miss what the game is trying to teach them in order to succeed. Part of the issue here is because the items aren't needed for the first level. They're a bonus, and most players would be focused on how cool the game looks, how great the music is, and how it's awesome being able to wall jump between two structures. The second area is the entrance exam. Of course, the game is not blameless here. It does things that many of its contemporaries do that act as frustrations. The knockback when hit in levels with pits to fall into, how enemies will respawn indefinitely when certain thresholds in the level are triggered, and the amount of precision platforming required. Thankfully, the controls are tight. I never felt that I wasn't in control, and that's why despite these frustrations, I was enjoying myself as I was learning the new challenges and inching my way through the levels. Ninja Gaiden is still a joy to play all these years later. The best thing I can say about World Games is that the games on offer are ones I've never seen in other sporting game compilations. There's log rolling, caber toss, bull riding, and sumo wrestling. They look pretty good too, but the controls are strange. Barrel jumping is a good example. In other games like this, you mash either the A or B button to gain speed, but here you rhythmically press left and right on the D-pad. The jump also needs to be primed by holding the jump button, and you have to land properly as well. I think caber tossing is similar, but I wasn't able to get the rhythm down, and I had no luck working out on how to succeed at log rolling or bull riding. Yeah, I should have read the manual, but I didn't want to. And even though the variety is nice, The games on offer weren't engaging enough for me to want to dedicate the time to not only work out how they control, but to get good at them. The only thing I remember about renting Adventures of Lolo as a kid is the Medusa heads, which will instantly kill you if you walk in their line of sight. I had forgotten about the behavior of every other creature, so when this pink guy threw a knife at me, it was a bit of a jump scare. Like the pink guys, every level throws something new at you. I had forgotten there were power-ups that need a certain threshold of hearts to activate. The last level I tried had me taking it in for a few seconds before making my first move, kicking the hazards into motion. It's when the creatures start combining that things feel exceptionally tricky, and this is only the second floor of the tower. I have said that I dislike puzzle games with monsters in them, and Lolo is no exception. The monsters with movement quirks like the green guys who fall asleep once they touch you, or the gray walls, play with situational awareness and when to make a move, but the armadillos which just roll around are infuriating. I think for me, it's the difference between a creature that's part of the puzzle and a creature that's a hazard. I also like the idea of having to choose which enemies to turn into eggs, but I dislike how it's unclear which piece of heart will allow you to fire your egg without picking it up first. The repetitiveness of the music aside, I think this is a great puzzle game. My favorite of the series is Lolo 3 with its world map and greater sense of progression, but it still plays with the same base mechanics we have here in the original Adventures of Lolo. I don't know if I'd call it the best puzzle game on the platform, but it'd be high on my list. Amagon has an interesting game loop. You need to collect enough points by killing enemies in order to transform into a buff dude to take out the boss at the end. The closer to the boss you get, the more points the enemies drop, giving you a last-ditch effort to buff up. If this idea was attached to a better platformer, I could see myself enjoying it. It's all to do with the jump. It feels like clearing gaps is an if-then statement. If you haven't jumped far enough, the game won't give you the chance to eke out a few more pixels by holding down the button or moving to the right. You'll be in the late arc of the jump and will instantly plummet, like the gravity has been tripled. I noticed this the most when trying to shoot an enemy in the middle of a leap. Anything not on your shot level is tough to deal with. Timing a jump shot never went the way I wanted it to, which is okay in the first level when ammunition isn't a problem, but seeing how the game's difficulty increased drastically in Stage 2, I bet conserving ammo becomes a necessity sooner rather than later. Which is a shame. I liked the goofy caveman look of Amagon and the music was pleasant enough. The game looks like it comes from much earlier in the NES's life cycle, which I guess I'm going to see a lot of in 1989, but I still liked its vibe. This is one of those games that I think could have been a good time with some fine-tuning of the controls. Okay, so the internet consensus may be right about this one. I had no idea what the hell I was supposed to do, so I ran to the manual. That helped, but that knowledge turned the game into the world's most boring walking simulator. Until the dogs appear in the graveyard, it's easy to avoid damage as Dr. Jekyll is strolling to his wedding. But why does everyone in this town want him dead? These top hat wearing bastards are the worst, dropping bombs in the street that will hit you if you're to the left of them, but if you've walked past them, you're usually fine. And how backed up are these birds in the graveyard? They're dropping a week's worth of dookie at a time. Given enough stress from being assaulted by townspeople and wayward animals, Dr. Jekyll will turn into Mr. Hyde. The trick of the game is that if Mr. Hyde moves further along his screen than Dr. Jekyll has, God will smite you and it'll be game over. Sadly, I forgot to take life into account as well, and I got overrun by hopping demons. At least the game let me continue on the new screen. I do find the backgrounds nicely detailed and the music's not too bad, but the game is such a slog to play. Everything is slow and unresponsive. Dr. Jekyll has a cane attack, but I never used it, opting to just jump over or walk under danger. While I can appreciate the novel idea of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, its execution is lacking, and I'm glad to be moving on. Most NES games have short music loops, but they're short, and then there's the music of Fist of the North Star. The soundtrack alone was causing me torment. As a side-scrolling brawler, it can be fun. The controls are loose, allowing you to jump and attack, flailing around the stage, hitting enemies with disregard. Using the punch will make their heads explode, just like in the anime I remember renting and watching as a teenager. After a short trek through the stage, you'll come across a mid-boss and then the stage boss. I found it easy to make progress in the game until I hit level 3. Level 2 was a bit of a maze, having to walk up and down flights of stairs to find the way through, but level 3 is just a small flat plane. Before long you can no longer move right, and walking back to the start, I could no longer move left. I tried entering what looked like open doors, or trying to jump up through the top of the screen, but I couldn't make anything work. Eventually time ran out, I died, and my alarm went off. Aside from that stumbling block, it's a fun enough time. I'd just recommend muting the game audio and putting on a different soundtrack. I thought this was just going to be a shoot-'em-up that was geared towards new players. It still is, with its generous extra lives, health pool, and how easy it is to recharge said health, but it slightly changes genre once the second level begins. Whatever is creating these enemies has gone haywire. We need to travel into the center of this thing, disable its 4 nodes, and make sure it's no longer a threat to anyone. Once we arrive, our character continues on foot. It's still a top-down shooter, but like the human sections of Blaster Master, it's more a maze. There are branching paths, monster generators that need to be shut down, and all manner of traps. I found my way to the first node, and the game changed back into a shoot-'em-up again. I wanted to keep playing. It was easy enough to make consistent progress, and no section overstayed its welcome. The new shoot-'em-up section ramped up the difficulty a bit with an underwater motif, but it was still manageable and engaging. I'm pleasantly surprised because when it started, I thought to myself, here we go, another shoot-'em-up. But it turned out to be so much more. Another game I've never heard of before ends up being a hidden gem. You'll love to see it. Legacy of the Wizard was more complicated than I was expecting. It's a side-scrolling dungeon crawl. Choose a character and delve into the ground to jump over platforms, shoot respawning enemies, rest at inns, and find items that will help you explore even further into the depths. My character had low strength, but a high jump. This was unfortunate because you take damage if you drop from too high up. It's not much damage, but it had me playing it safe as I tried to make my way from screen to screen. One issue is I wasn't sure what everything did. Sometimes enemies dropped vials that I swear would take away health, and I wonder if the glove I found was what made it possible to walk through secret blocks instead of shooting them open. The inventory screen that you can only access at a rest area shows a lot of potential, but even though I was able to equip an item, I didn't know how to use it. I have to assume that the manual explains everything, right? It's tense because you have limited health and magic, even though you can restock at inns or when an enemy drops the right top-up, but it made me constantly aware of my ammo and health. I'm embarrassed to say that it took me until the back half of my game time to realize that the top row of my stats were sets of 10, while the bottom row was sets of 1. A small detail when one is exploring and trying to understand the mechanics, but embarrassing nonetheless. I'm curious to what a full game of Legacy of the Wizard looks like. How deep do the dungeons go? What benefits do different characters have to offer? And what new attacks or ways to explore are made available to the player as the game continues. I always like when I leave my time testing out a game with a curiosity of what comes next. Even if it doesn't meet my expectations, getting me to wonder in the first place means it's doing something right. The first 3 levels of Mappy-Land are fine. Get the cheese, avoid the cats, and do so by abusing the invincibility while bouncing on the trampolines. Of course, bouncing too much will break the trampolines, but it's easy to route a path around the cats with all the multi-level platforms. If you get into trouble, there's level hazards and catnip you can place down, but when trapped, I often found they didn't do what I wanted them to. It's only in level 4, when the game turns into a more traditional platformer, with vines and crossing over large swaths of water, that the imprecision of the jump rears its ugly head, and the whole game comes crashing down. I replayed those first 3 levels so many damn times, and wasn't enjoying myself other than the thought that this is a novel idea for a game that could have been executed so much better. This is another game that looks like it was made much earlier in the NES's life cycle. It's a pretty standard platformer, with a relatively catchy theme song that outstays its welcome. It's one of those platformers where not only will holding down the jump button make you jump farther, but if you jump again the instant you land on the ground, the next jump will be higher. It's fairly low stress in the early goings, and it has a generous continue if you fall in a pit or lose all your life. But sadly, once I entered a new area, it turned into a maze game. A bit like Millen's Secret Castle, with secret blocks to destroy. I would have enjoyed working out how to get through the maze if there wasn't a magic spewing praying mantis on both sides of the new screen once I walked through the door. Mystery Quest is one of those games that just feels fine to play. Considering what I've been through this year already, that counts for something. Man, this is terrible. It's a game where you play Arnold Schwarzenegger in one of his most iconic roles, and this action game doesn't even give you a gun? Oh, there are grenades down the bottom of the first level, but once I grabbed them, I couldn't find a way out, so I jumped off the cliff and opted to spend the rest of my time jumping over enemies, cause the hitbox to hit them with my fist was atrocious. And you can't duck and attack with a punch for some reason. The jump feels unstable, but I was able to hop from precarious platform to precarious platform in stage 2. I liked the layout of that one, with the added hurdle of some of the rocks being sentient and walking around when you jump on them. Then in stage 3, the platforms don't actually have walls to hug up against. When I walked into what I thought was a wall, I walked off the stage. That's extra nasty when it's hard enough to hit enemies, and the knockback will send you into those non-walls. The music is interesting, and I like the look of Predator, but the way this plays considering its source material is absolutely baffling. Taboo the Sixth Sense is a fortune-telling program. You enter your details, ask a question, and it lays out a spread of tarot cards to answer it. The spread is visually interesting and the music's pretty good, but some of the sentences don't make sense. They might have been constrained by character limits. After that, you enter your state and spread of numbers, and it'll tell you what numbers are lucky before restarting. It's well made, but it's not even game-like. I'm baffled that this was made. I remember Operation Wolf from almost every arcade I visited. After a couple quarters, I never tried it again because its difficulty is ridiculous. I thought maybe the NES version might be more lenient, but sadly it's not to be. A brief warning to those with photosensitivity issues, as I am about to show a couple seconds of trying to use the zapper to play the game. You'll see why I quickly abandoned the idea. Okay, footage beginning now. That left me with the controller. It's hard to aim with the D-pad. I set it to a higher speed and hoped for the best as I made a mad dash across the screen, trying to shoot every enemy that popped up. There's limited grenades and limited ammo, though shooting animals will often net you a clip or two. Just don't hit the innocent people who find themselves in your sights far too often, or your precious health is going to take a hit, and every hit is disastrous to your survivability. The screen is full of chaos. Helicopters, armored tanks, and grunts with grenades. It's a miracle I made it to Mission 4 on my second attempt. There's always something ready to cause damage, and the lack of precision doesn't help. It really hurt me when I fought the boss of the jungle stage. The guy has a hostage, so I had to be careful about how to position the cursor and when to take my shot. I'm surprised I pulled it off. I guess this isn't a bad port, but I never thought Operation Wolf was a particularly engaging game in the first place.
The Adventures of Bayou.
I had this cartridge as a kid. I think I was able to get to level 2 or 3. Even with the Game Genie, I don't remember getting too far. Bayou Billy is brutal, which sucks because the presentation and different styles of gameplay are commendable. Not that I was able to get past stage 1 in this attempt. It was only watching Jeremy Parrish's video on the game that I found out the Japanese version is fairly tuned and enjoyably playable. They ramped up the difficulty for the American market, and this is the result. The reason you see me hopping around the stage like a fool is I remember the jump kick was one of the best ways to stay out of danger. It might be quicker to use the ground kick, but it leaves you open to attack, and it doesn't take too many hits before you lose a square of health. Some enemies drop health, and some have weapons. I picked up a pistol, but I couldn't figure out how to fire it. The worst was when the game locks you on a screen with 2 alligators. Not only do they take a ridiculous amount of punches, but it can be a while before they pop their heads out of the water to allow a hit in the first place. I'm amazed that I ever put in the time to get to stage 2 or 3. This game does not respect its players. If it was like Double Dragon, with enemies going down after a few hits and not dealing as much damage, at least the beat-em-up sections would be more fun, what with all the weapons and enemy variety. As it stands, I was relieved when my time was up, and I could say goodbye to Billy. So this is apparently based on a TV show about a special attack helicopter and its crew flying dangerous missions. I have to wonder what the show was like, because all I can say about Airwolf is yeesh. It's a dogfighting game like Top Gun, but you don't have as much ability to maneuver, and often my life was gone before I knew what hit me. It was probably a missile. The game likes to showcase cutscenes, whether it's the helicopter taking off, it refueling, or enemies running to their planes. It's cool the first time you see it, but gets tedious when you have to watch the animations every attempt. You can shoot down the enemy towers to stop more planes from attacking, and each mission is about rescuing people. The game turns into a simplistic lunar lander, where you have to move to the middle of the screen and hold up before the copter lands so it doesn't crash into the ground. Refueling is the same. In a strange use of controls, the start button increases speed and the select button lowers it. What's annoying is that trying to get the enemy in your sights to take him out will completely reorient you on the map. And most of the time I was getting hit no matter what I did. I'm hoping the next helicopter game is better than the last couple I played. California Games is a minigame collection. Maybe the minigame collection, if memory serves. I was able to work out a couple of the games, but most left me baffled. I was tempted to look at the manual, but I had 6 games to try out. My favorites were Footbag and Flying Disc, because I had at least some semblance of how to play them. The majority of my time with each game was working out just what each button on the controller did, and in games like Half Pipe or Flying Disc, I didn't have much time to do so before hitting a failed state and having to try again. That's why in Footbag, every new trick excited me. Footbag is about chaining together sick-looking hacky-sack skills. The first time my hacky-sacker hit a jester or spun around was thrilling. The sack is so unpredictable, and the window for error on hitting it is so tiny that I wonder how anyone is supposed to become proficient. Flying Disc took a while to learn how to manipulate the power bar. You press left to start it off, then you have to press right in the speed zone, and then left again in the angle zone. After a lot of trial and error, I got that working, but as funny as it is to see the other player leap to try and catch the disc, I had no idea how to make a successful grab. BMX and skating were about regulating speed and avoiding obstacles. I like how with skating you have to use the B button to prime the jump before the skater leaps. Surfing was my third favorite, as I started to get used to riding the waves, even if I couldn't pull off any tricks. Like trying out Skate or Die in the 1988 video, here I just couldn't work out how to do anything but fall off the skateboard. As minigame collections go, California Games is not too bad. I'm sure with the help of the manual and tons of practice, you could get some high scores across all the events. But after my time with it, I'm not sure why you would want to. Whoa, Desert Commander is like a proto version of Advance Wars. 2 groupings of opposing armies taking turns moving their troops towards each other, and when they attack, the offending unit doesn't get off scot-free. The problem is, I didn't know which units were weak against which units, so as I was working out how to play, I found myself in bad positions where I was getting decimated by the CPU. As this is so rudimentary, moving and menuing is slow, and I could see over a longer session how it would become tedious, with the looping music wearing on one's sanity. I'm a fan of Desert Commander mostly for pulling off a competent turn-based strategy game of this style on NES hardware. Looking into it, I found out Famicom Wars, the progenitor of Advance Wars, came out the same year as Desert Commander in Japan, and to be honest, it does look more advanced. And that never made its way over to North America though, so we'll have to make do with marveling at Desert Commander. What we have here with Guerrilla War is a version of Akari Warriors that is a little more fun to play. Weapons that tear huge chunks out of the cover that is littered throughout the battlefield, tanks to hop into, heaps of game slowdown when there are too many enemies on screen to keep track of alongside the effects, and what I found coolest of all, the ability to continue right from where you died. I don't know if the continues are unlimited, but seeing how insane the incoming fire is in level 2, I think even a dedicated player would need them. Enemy soldiers pop out of everywhere, and I do mean everywhere. If you've died and reverted back to your pea shooter, it can be tough to clear a path forward, as the grenade has a distance on it that requires precision not quite afforded by the game's controls. I feel this way about a lot of these types of games. The special weapons are so cool and destructive that it feels the game was designed around them. So if you don't have access to them, you're going to have a worse time. A good example is this helicopter boss and the general before it. Trying to dodge incoming fire while still being in a good position to hit it with grenades made the whole sequence take longer than it would have if I had the simplest weapon upgrade. I have to wonder how much slowdown a 2-player game would have. If the continues are unlimited, considering all the destruction on offer, this could be one of the finer co-op experiences on the console. Not a bad little basketball game. In Hoops, you choose from a strange named roster, pick your court and point limit, and play some 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 on a half court. The close-ups of the players dunking is great, as is the opposing player jumping up to swat the ball away. I never knew how to properly steal the ball from my opponent. They seem to have no trouble, but at least I got the hang of finding an opening and speeding up to the basket for a quick point, often in spectacular fashion. Far too often, one of us would get pinged for charging. I have no idea what caused this, and before I figured out how to throw the ball, I'd get pinged for traveling, which is apparently when you jump but don't release the ball. The music loop got a bit much. The game is called Hoops, not Loops. Am I right? I think this would be fun against a friend, and similar to many sports games I've played, the names to select from are delightful. I always feel it acts as a type of personality test. So, what does that say about me that I picked legs? The world may never know. Huh, man. I was looking forward to trying out Hydlide. It's an early JRPG with an interesting battle system. Holding A will enable attack mode, and letting go will put you into defense mode. Walk into enemies to kill them. The problem is, I'd be caught unawares trying to run into the slimes, or any other type of enemy, and die. If I stuck to slimes, it felt like it'd take longer than the 10 minutes I had to level up and maybe be able to tackle something stronger, like the kobolds. It was also difficult to constantly run into enemies as they were always moving, and I never knew when an attack was coming. I bailed on Hydlide pretty early after the manual didn't tell me anything to help me survive. What a shame. Where do I begin? As a teenager and for most of my 20s, when asked what my favorite game was, I would reply Mega Man 2. Sometimes in between uni classes, I would load up the game in a browser emulator and see how far I could get in the time I had. Funnily enough, I haven't played Mega Man 2 properly since those days, so it was fun to see if the game still held any sway over me. From the opening music, I was hooked. Everyone has their preferred order to take on the bosses. I always fight Metal Man first. I was a bit out of practice, missing that large jump at the end of the stage, and dodging his blades was trickier than I remember. I used to hardly be hit, but he went down, and then it was off to Woodman stage. Now you might think I'd fight Metal Man first because of how game-breaking the metal blades are as a weapon. They fire in 8 directions, carry a lot of damage, and don't take that much energy to shoot. Amusingly, while I switched to the blades for this footage, I always used to play through the game with a Mega Blaster. I guess I enjoyed making things just that little bit harder for myself. All those positive memories and feelings about the game came flooding back. I loved the stages and the enemies and bosses. I loved the music and how Mega Man feels to control. The jumping and shooting feel great, and the special abilities add to the strong foundation. I don't know if I'd still say Mega Man 2 is my favorite game of all time, but I still love it. And if it doesn't hit my number 1 slot in the ranking this year, I think we'll all be very surprised. Monster Party has to be another one of those games based off a manga or anime that was changed for the US market, right? I'm amazed by the horror tone of it. The title card for Stage 1 drenched in blood and skeletons. This would have caused a conniption with American parents, not to mention how the world changes when you reach the halfway point of the stage. I love how Monster Party looks and plays. There's a lengthy intro where this kid Mark sees a shooting star and it turns out to be a monster named Bert. Hey Bert! Who wants the kid's help in fighting the bad monsters on his planet, because Mark has a baseball bat. You can use the bat to return any projectile an enemy fires at you. I think this is the way to handle bosses like the Seymour plant and Pumpkin Guy, but I found it easier to get up close and tank the damage rather than being patient and returning fire. It's probably why I couldn't successfully beat the first level. I liked the platforming, enemy placement, and what the enemies looked like. It's all very bizarre. Horror in an absurdist way. Enemies drop health, and sometimes a pill that will turn Mark into Bert. Hey Bert! Who can fly and shoot lasers. It doesn't last long. This is a game I found challenging but engaging. Continues start you over at the beginning of a stage, so it feels like you have to learn the level and master your batting strategy to make it through. I wonder how difficult the game gets, and what new enemy and boss designs it has in store. When going through so many NES games for a project like this, games like Monster Party are a pleasant surprise. Whoa, this feels like the beginnings of the Total War series. Choose a region, roll your stats, grow your army and territory, and either invade others or defend. Then it's a turn-based strategy game of moving units into a superior position on the battlefield and making the right moves to attack. I won my first battle after making a couple of mistakes and was about to engage in another when the timer went off. I have no idea if the decisions I made in the rounds between the two fights would have helped me. I grew my population, trained my army, and hired some more men, as I took heavy losses in the first battle. I could see this as a great way to spend some time once all the intricacies of gameplay are understood. Truthfully, I imagine it's not all that complex, seeing it's an NES game, but it feels like it has nuance. I just wish I had liked the music more, as a full game would subject a player to a hell of a lot more of it. '89 has had a couple of Power Pad games, so I guess it's not too surprising to see a couple of Zapper games as well. Shooting range is what it says on the box. There's a themed screen, and you have to shoot the targets to the best of your ability. Misses can cause damage, and if you run out of time, it's game over. There are power-ups to raise both these stats, but in level 2 they were scarce. They were scarce in level 1 as well. So were the targets. Sometimes it felt like ages before something appeared on screen, and it could be a character that would only pop its head up for a split second before disappearing. It makes me wonder if I could have used the controller to scroll to a different screen where more was happening. If not, then I found the random nature of the targets and the power-ups too arbitrary to enjoy shooting range, and it would have been so much worse using a real zapper on a television and not just my mouse pointer. The best I can say is the game has decent presentation. A Power Pad game where you play as a police officer? Unlike some of the other Power Pad games, I could work out how to control this one. Barely. It's never intuitive. I wonder if it would be easier to parse using the actual Power Pad. You can face left or right, jump, hit people with your baton, and move up and down a level. You can also throw cans once you collect them. I think the goal is to apprehend the bad guy, but he moves so erratically, and here I am, hardly able to untie my fingers on this keyboard I'm using to be able to do anything. This may be the best Power Pad game I've played on the system, but that's not saying much, so let's move on. Oh, the memories! My alarm went off right when I was standing on top of the dam, and I said to myself, I got to at least attempt the swimming section for old time's sake. Yep, it was as brutal as I remember it. What didn't help was I had only 3 turtles left at this point, all on really low health. That's why the game is so difficult. There's only so many health pickups, and the enemies can obliterate the entirety of a health bar if you're not careful. I wasn't careful, or smart with who to give the pizza to, and so I had a bunch of injured turtles. Damn. Me and my friend Ryan were huge TMNT fans when we were kids. He got the game and we played it a lot. Of course, we were disappointed that it wasn't the same as the arcade game, which would appear on the NES later, and I remember us never getting further than stage 3, which is right after the dam. This is a game where I feel its famed difficulty is deserved, and it's a bit of a shame because I think it looks and sounds pretty good. The game feel is a bit odd, but not what I would call bad. The jump has a fun height, and the weapons are responsive, well, except for Donatello's bow. I think that's the trickiest part. Each turtle's weapon is tuned for specific enemies and scenarios, and it's all too easy to lose a turtle and find yourself unequipped to handle the situation you're in. A real trap for any kid who just wanted to play their favorites. I went overtime on playing Track and Field 2, and I didn't even get through all the events. Now this is a minigame collection. I had the cartridge when I was young, wrecking my fingers trying to mash the A button for power in any running event, or destroying my thumb trying to rotate the D-pad in hammer throw. I played a lot of the versus games with my friends, mostly fencing and taekwondo. What I'm noticing playing through this at the moment is how much care and detail has been put into the visuals. The characters are well rendered and animated, and the backgrounds match the fidelity. The music is enjoyable, and I'll always recognize that cheering sound effect no matter where I hear it. As a collection of Olympic sports minigames, it's a worthy sequel to Track and Field, and the best minigame collection I've played on the NES so far. I don't much care for minigame collections not named WarioWare these days, but I spent plenty of time enjoying these events alone and with friends back in the day, and that has to count for something. think I remember playing Baseball Stars on Neo Geo arcade machines. This is the best baseball game I played on the NES so far, and I say that after once again getting trounced by the computer and not understanding what I needed to do when I was up to bat. Fielding is a different story. This is a game where you can slide to catch the ball, your guys will automatically try and position themselves in the area of a pop fly, and look at this cool little animation of the guy climbing the barrier to try and catch a home run. Valiant effort, my man. It seems pitching and batting is more about positioning, both being able to move around within the confines of the mound or batting zone. Sadly, this led me to take swings at pitches I should have let go. That's always the tension of being up to bat, in real life or in a video game. You have a split-second decision to take a swing at the ball coming at you or to let it go. I think that's why it never gets old. Anything could happen on each pitch. You know the game is good when I'm talking more about the actual sport than its digital representation. I'm sure with prolonged play, I'd get used to how batting works and become even more competent at pitching. Like most of the sports games on the console, it'd be a lot more fun against a friend of a similar skill level as you both work out how to play. Now let's see if any other baseball game can surpass it. This is where rare games started to receive their reputation for being hard. Cobra Triangle is pretty cool. Each level has a different goal or a different approach to the goal. Your boat shoots and can jump off of ramps, and at the end of each stage, it unfurls a helicopter rotor and flies to the next mission. And there's a dragon! Well, sea monster, but that's like a water dragon. It also contains the upgrade system from Gradius. Each pod will move the upgrade tree along, with Select adding it to your arsenal. It's amazing how easy the mines level was with the speed and missile upgrades, but then the speed bit me in the ass trying to get upriver. On normal speed, it's difficult enough to avoid the logs and whirlpools. Going faster? No chance. I like how the second stage of pod collection is gifting the player what they'll need to make future challenges easier. I wish I'd had some of these upgrades when I got to the sea monster on my first attempt. The pea shooter wasn't cutting it. One issue is how difficult it is to hold the B button for acceleration while tapping A to fire. Autofire solved that issue, having to only focus on steering, which is tougher than it looks, because while I think the game feels fine to control, maneuvering your watercraft is not a smooth experience. And there's a weird thing where after a couple hits or attacks, instead of just taking off health, your craft will sink and lose a life. I wonder if it's a critical damage chance that the player has to be wary of. While I can appreciate the variety and cool factor of Cobra Triangle, hell, even how fun it is to play in the moment, it's not a level of challenge I'd enjoy trying to slam my head up against repeatedly to try and finish. I foresee this opinion applying to future rare titles as well. I remember as a kid, my friend Hillary's family had a personal computer that had Defender of the Crown on it. It looked phenomenal. I have to say, the NES version looks pretty stellar as well. I just wish I could read the writing. My eyes watered every time it came up with the color and font choices. This is a game of conquest. Building up armies, taking over territory, and holding jousting tournaments to raise the honor of your name. You can ransack enemy castles, clash with armies, and defend your own castle against invaders. It's remarkable the differing styles of gameplay there are, all pretty well rendered on the NES hardware. Sadly, winning is an entirely different matter. I could never gain success in anything I tried. It's so easy to be overwhelmed. and I wasn't able to walk away successfully from a ransack or tournament attempt. Before I knew it, the barbarians were at the gates, and I could never shoot all the attackers quickly enough. I'm sure there's a trick to success in Defender of the Crown, but while I enjoyed the visuals, the gameplay and difficulty curve were too annoying for me to want to continue. Well, this is different to the arcade version. It kind of has a Bionic Commando flavor to it. Strider has a weirdly stiff jump when trying to ascend platforms, but the weapon is snappy, and it feels great to slice down the enemies that continuously respawn the instant that section of the level leaves your sights. I am ashamed to say I got stuck. I made my way through what I can only assume is an office building and into the police station, having the disc needed to pass through the S1 doors. I got another disc, but the guy in the room says I needed to analyze it. I couldn't use it to pass through the S2 doors, and I couldn't find a way to access the computer at the start of the game. So I found myself wandering in circles, getting low on health until an enemy would drop a pill to top it off again. I like the music and think I could get into the vibe of Strider, but I guess I need to be told what to do. It'd be nice to know what the energy is for and what the trick section of the menu does as well. I remember really liking this one. The characters are expressive and there's special moves that distort the ball as you fling it at the face of the opposing team. It also plays well. The game does a good job of automatically switching which team member you're controlling, and it's easy to duck an incoming shot or to catch it out of midair. Running up to the line or jumping adds more impact to a shot, and while I don't know what triggers a special attack, I would mostly get them after a good run-up. And the damage can vary wildly too. In the first two stages, my attacks were devastating. Look at this finish against the English team. I hit him so hard, he looped through the screen and tucked into a roll before becoming an angel. Then against the Indian team, I'd pull off what looked like a strong hit, smacking one of their members in the back of the head, and the damage would read 2. I have memories of breezing through the single-player mode, having fun dominating every team I came across, but all these years later, I was playing a game of paranoid ducking and weaving as the Indian team passed the ball back and forth to their outer members. I never knew what direction it was going to come from. It's impressive how much is going on too. The screen flicker that shows the NES is struggling to render everything was a constant presence during my time with Super Dodgeball. I've said before how I love when games cause slowdown or flicker. It can be frustrating when having all these characters on screen leads to gameplay issues, but it's a small price to pay for such an enjoyable game about throwing a volleyball at the heads of the opposing team. When Thundercade started, I was intrigued. Oh, this is a shoot 'em up where you're driving a motorcycle and the power-ups are adding on sidecars. That's clever. I got lulled into a false sense of security by the sparse visuals and the pleasant music. The problem is it's far too easy to get hit. Tanks and army men come from every which way, and you might have a sidecar that's only shooting left or right, making it all but useless. I guess it's a good thing that one hit will remove the power-ups, but they don't appear often enough, and it's far too easy to catch a stray from any direction. I like the idea that the mid-boss was simply surviving the barrage of fire until you're allowed to move on, but maybe you can destroy the vessel and I just didn't have the firepower to do so. That was certainly the case with the first boss. I couldn't seem to hit the final gun, and it kept moving closer until it squished me. I enjoyed the idea of Thundercade, but at this point, There's far too many better shoot-em-ups on the NES to spend my time with. I was interested to see how a literary classic was going to be turned into an NES game. I mean, I assumed a platformer, because it's always a platformer, but I was hoping for something playable. Okay, maybe that's going too far. I managed to get to the lower levels of the ship where I was battling octopi, which took far too many tries to get past. Tom Sawyer dies when you look at him funny. The jump works with momentum, which is needed to pass the barrels, but it's not what I call a jump that feels good to execute, and the slingshot has an annoying angle to it. At the start, it's better to just run under the birds instead of trying to hit them as they dive bomb. The cabin boys are a large target, so it was easier to hit them, but I can't say the same for the mice. The king mouse went down easily enough. Oh, and what's with this strange music? Listen to it! The game looks pretty bad by 1989 NES standards too. I was happy to leave this one alone after I got a game over for the umpteenth time, having Tom Sawyer waking up from his dream and releasing me from this nightmare. The president has been kidnapped by ninjas. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? This might be the most concise and hilarious intro card in video game history. I played Bad Dudes all the time in the arcade, and I'm sure I rented the NES version from the video store once or twice to play with a friend. Of course the arcade version is better, but this is a well-made port. Sure, the sprites aren't as impressive, nor the backgrounds, nor the sound of the hits and the music, but the core of what makes Bad Dudes great is still here. Mostly, it's being able to jump up and down between levels. I was always a sucker for a brawler or platformer that allowed this. I just found the idea of it so cool as a kid. It's why I loved Shinobi in the arcades, but we'll get to that if I ever covered the early Sega consoles. I love how the attack button turns from punches into head kicks, like the game programmed a simple combo when you're attacking more than one guy in a row. And even though using it is a death sentence, I love the brawler staple of the super kick that drains your own life bar. It's hilarious how easy the game becomes once you pick up a dagger. The real danger is the gray, red, and green ninjas who take more than one hit to put down. Stabbing them levels the playing field. It's needed too, because enemies will walk through you, jump into you, and there's always more on the way. You almost need a second player just to watch your back. Oh, and from level 2 onwards, jumping over gaps is introduced, but in a way that won't kill you if you mess up. On the truck, you zip along the ground so you have a chance to jump back up, and in the sewer, the sewage will zap your health so you have time to jump out. On its surface, Bad Dudes doesn't seem special. It's a brawler where you're fighting ninjas. It's trying to be cool, which can feel insincere today, but it's all the little details in the gameplay that add up to making it an entertaining experience all these years later. And what does the game have to say about how it perceives itself? I'm bad. One issue with games on the NES is that the harshness of the sound chip can work against the game unless the music is excellent. This means bad looping tracks easily grate on one's nerves, making the act of playing the game depressing. The Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle, yes, the title has "the" in it, plays the same silly music loop for the first 6 to 7 levels before we finally change tile sets and then have a new track to listen to. Strangely, we only get 2 levels of this new zone before things switch again. I wonder if it loops back. Hey. Crazy Castle is a Looney Tunes themed version of Lode Runner. Bugs has to collect all the carrots, going through doors, walking upstairs, and falling off ledges, all the while avoiding Sylvester, Yosemite Sam, Daffy Duck, and Wile E. Coyote. Well, you can avoid them, or use the Acme weapons to take them out. The whole tone is light, and the game itself is quite easy. The pathing on the enemies is simplistic, and they get stuck a lot, making it simple to plan around them. Of course, this game has the same issue as Lode Runner, where scrolling across the stage can have an enemy pop up in your face, but that only happened to me once. I also got trapped, but that was my own fault. Crazy Castle plays well, and the levels are fun enough. If it wasn't for the music, I'd be rating this higher. I think with the Looney Tunes wrapper and the low stress of the stages, this was designed for younger players. That and you get an extra life for completing the stage. I'm thinking it might be better than the other Bugs Bunny game on the console, but we won't find that out until the 1990 video. Now we're talking. The first Dragon Quest game. I've made my love of JRPGs known, and here we have the granddaddy of them all. Now it's easy to point out how cumbersome the turn-based combat is, or how long it'd take to build up enough gold to purchase the better weapons and armor in the store. But the game is great in guiding the player in how to play it. The king tells you that important items are in the chests, one of them being a key that is needed to get through the door to exit the throne room. Talking to the folks around the palace and in the town, I got a rough idea about how to play, and then off I went, adventuring in the wilderness, battling slimes until it was time to stop. I feared that with my 10-minute time limit, I wouldn't even get out of the towns, and it was close, but here's something I wasn't expecting. I found myself engaged in its systems and fantasy, rudimentary as it may be. There's something about the game loop and progression of these role-playing games, even in their most basic form, that engages me. Now I'm even more excited to check out the rest of the NES sequels, to see if what I found so compelling in this first title has been streamlined and strengthened. I might desire a walkthrough so as to find the most efficient path through the game, but even so, I could see myself spending the time to beat Dragon Warrior. And hey, any NES game that I want to play more of after the 10 minutes are up has done something right as far as I'm concerned. This is a game I had on my NES. I traded a couple games with a friend before I moved to Australia, and this was one of them. As a kid, I always laughed at the name because it almost sounds like fuck Xanadu. I was easily amused. Anyway, this is a role-playing game using the side-scrolling Zelda 2 style. You've returned home to the Kingdom of Elves at the bottom of the World Tree, and the well that grants them their immortality has almost dried up. It's time to find out what the cause is and save the kingdom. I was exploring a bit more than I needed to, because I didn't think visiting the king would require traveling through enemies. Once I exhausted all other options, I tried hopping over one of these spiny Koopa critters and died. The game revived me on the same screen with full health and magic, so I continued leaping, met the king, got some cash to equip myself, unlocked the Door of Jack, and started making my way through the world. The action is very NES platformer. Enemies respawn when you exit the screen, and getting hit will knock you backwards. I bought a magic spell alongside my dagger and enjoyed the meat and gold coins that were dropping off enemies as I made my way from screen to screen. I gotta say, with the detailed background art, lovely music, engaging action, and a world I'd like to learn more about, just like Dragon Warrior, this is a game I'd love to finally make my way through one day. I remember getting a ways into it as a teenager, but I don't think I ever beat it. it might be time to rectify that. This took me off guard. Flying Dragon: The Secret Scroll starts playing like a lower than average Kung Fu clone. Bosses appear every few steps, and each boss defeated gives the player new powers. I unlocked the door at the end of the level, and after some exposition, was taken to a training school where the game teaches a deliberate back and forth fighting game. Since this is the training school, a target appears on either my character or my opponent, up high, in the middle, or down low. I had to press the corresponding buttons to either defend or attack, and as the training continued, the window between these targets lessened, leading to what would be a cool looking push and pull of martial arts combat. I say would, because the game didn't always respond to my inputs. It felt stiff to control, which took the edge off how cool I found the concept. Once the game previewed the other competitors in the world tournament I entered, I wanted to see how the fights would look. I was also giddy to experience the special attack the master taught, where a foe could be taken out in a single blow. Sadly, when the game started up again, it reverted back to the platforming section, and seeing my timer had gone off a while back, I left things there. I wonder if the actual fights are as Simon says as the training? Not that I'd mind that, but I have a feeling that considering the input issues I had during sparring, the matches might not live up to the potential of what I'm imagining they could be. Aw, I had high hopes for this one. I had a passing interest in basketball when I was younger, but even if I hadn't, a game with Larry Bird and Michael Jordan? That's gotta be great. Oh, if only it was. Maybe it's more complex than it seems and I just didn't understand how to play, but I could never take the ball off my opponent, and if they missed a shot, it was a miracle if I picked the ball up instead of the computer. Same when I missed a shot. The game felt like it was prioritizing the CPU. Eventually, I found I could score more points just shooting from the 3-point line when the round started, but I still tried to engage with the game properly, cause the 3-pointer didn't always work. Heck, being right next to the basket and throwing the ball didn't always work. This was one of those games when my timer went off, I said, oh thank God. I didn't have to play into the 4th quarter. Maybe I should have tried the 3-point contest in the menu instead. That's what I was basically doing anyway. Yeesh. A caveman shoot 'em up. My enthusiasm for the novelty of the idea quickly vanished as I played the adventures of Dino Ricky. It's one of those games where you lose your weapon upgrades when hit, yet there are still life hearts. And the enemies are designed so that you need the stronger weapons to erase them once they appear or you're going to be overwhelmed. I could have handled that if it wasn't for the platforming. There are these lily pads that you have to jump across. If you have the speed boost, the jump is more difficult to gauge. But the truth is that the regular jump is difficult to gauge. In the second platforming section, when some lily pads disappear for a time, I found myself walking into the water when I was sure I had plenty of platform left to stand on. And judging diagonal and horizontal jumps when the player is constantly moving forward is its own fresh hell. To cap it off, the third platforming section, because that seems to be what the game is showcasing, turns into Frogger, having to plan your jumps so you don't get caught on the edges of the screen with nowhere to go. In the end, I found my time with Adventures of Dino Ricky miserable. It's a good example of taking an interesting concept and then smushing it into the dirt. I mean, Dino Ricky. What a great name! I want to play a good game starring Dino Ricky. Ah, what could have been. Here we go! In Air Fortress, you approach the Air Fortress as a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, collecting bubbles of E and B. For what purpose? I could not tell ye. Then the ship touches down and a little guy gets out and goes inside the Air Fortress. The E is the energy pool of your guy and B is for bombs. I guess I could tell ye after all. The E score acts as your oxygen, your health, and your blaster ammo. Sitting in the elevators will replenish it somewhat, but the longer you're out in the open, the more dangerous the game becomes. This became evident in the second Air Fortress, when I had to navigate a long stretch of enemies shooting at me, but also spikes that I was sure would kill me outright if I touched them, with tractor beams pulling me towards that certain death. I loved the cleverness of combining ammo, health, and oxygen into one resource, and creating safe zones before venturing further into the deadly Air Fortress. There was a mother brain type orb at the end of the first level, which the bombs came in handy for. I thought I might need to travel back to my craft, but no. It was waiting for me a simple screen scroll past where the boss was, and off to the next Air Fortress I go. I could see the difficulty exponentially ramping up, and bombs and energy becoming more important in those scavenging sections where you approach the fortress. Originally, I thought it was just a simplistic shoot-'em-up, which I was fine with after Dino Ricky, but that Air Fortress turned out to be so much more delighted me as I learned what the game had to offer. Woof! My guess is that you need to collect the hourglasses to stop the characters at the bottom of the screen from fading away. They're not linked to the time limit though. If you don't make it to the end of the street before that runs out, you lose a life. Meanwhile, you gotta dodge the bullies, greasers, hula girls, whatever this green thing is, and these dudes walking a pane of glass back and forth. All while listening to the same loop on repeat over and over and over again. It feels like one of those old arcade games that gets a little harder each new level, but the changes aren't enough to keep the game engaging, and neither is the core gameplay. Even playing Ice Cream Tapper in the bonus stage wasn't engaging. Back to the Future? More like, back to the memory hole, am I right? I mean, there's already been some questionable movie license tie-ins, but there's something about Back to the Future that makes me think the frequency and quality of such games is about to get a lot worse. So Bad Street Brawler is apparently one of two games specifically designed for the Power Glove. I used a controller to play it as I couldn't get the Power Glove settings working in the emulator. I wonder if the glove would make it more exciting or more frustrating. What we have here is a side-scrolling beat-em-up with a Proto-Duke Nukem. One cool aspect of the game is the fighting moves in level 1 are different than the moves in level 2. If that continues, I think it's a cool way to create some variation. I'm happy we finally got a decent kick too, cause that sweep kick is lame. At least the grapple moves deal a lot of damage. One detail I loved was if you use the sweep on the dogs in level 2, our guy will roll them over and pet their tummy saying good boy. I tried to do that as much as possible cause doggies. I headbutted the gorilla. Really, aside from the novelty of the different moves, the strange look of the main character, and a possible enjoyment with the Power Glove, this is a pretty piss-poor pugilistic power fantasy. And I'm not just saying that because the punks with the bats were wailing on me. Wow, a fishing game. I don't think I fully understand how the mechanics worked in my time with it, but I at least caught a couple of fish. I even caught a black bass, but the game told me it was too small. Rude! It's kinda relaxing listening to the music as you wiggle your lure to try and attract the presence of the fishies. That changes when one grabs your line. It's a carpal tunnel-induced struggle to mash the buttons and rotate the D-pad like you're rotating the crank on your rod. You heard me. Holding the button to pull the line in helps too, but it can break, and then you lose your lure. I also like how you can move to different parts of the lake, and different lures will have different effects, even if no fish wanted to munch on my frog. I'm going to stop writing weird sentences about the black bass now. As a fishing game, it seemed decent enough. It's a good thing Castle Quest gives you all those lives, because I was throwing them away like unwanted Halloween candy. The bad news is that even though the music loop is short enough, when you die or change screen, it resets. That ate at my sanity as I was making my way through this castle's maze of horrors. This is one of those games that with a little retooling could be fun. I could see myself playing through the current version with the game muted and a custom soundtrack. The main issue is how restrictive the jump and attack is. See this little bird noble? It took a lot of experimentation to work out how to jump over him. Now, I did appreciate the clockwork nature of the early castle, leading to more leeway in terms of exploration. So many keys and colored doors. Yeah, I actually like what Castle Quest is trying to be. It's just that playing it is an exercise in frustration. Hey, it's that game that Shovel Knight took its whole mechanic from. Actually, I won't say that, because there might be an even earlier game that did the pogo bounce that I've never heard of. But that's what DuckTales is all about. It can take some time to get the hang of. Even I had a rough start, because it's been years since I last played this. But then the pogo bounce becomes second nature, and the real joy of the level design comes into play. I love secret areas. It's one reason why Super Mario Bros. Is still so fascinating. Walking on the top of the screen and discovering a new room full of treasure? Amazing! And here in the Amazon level of DuckTales, it does that twice in a row, and then pulls the same trick later on. The second level, Transylvania, has warp mirrors and even an illusory wall. The level design is a highlight, even if the enemies littered the route are more annoying than engaging to deal with. At least the idea of Golf swinging a mummy's ball and chain into them is unique. Oh yeah, the Golf swing. Another cool use for the cane to hit enemies above Scrooge or to move an object to pogo on. The cane really is a versatile and clever weapon that makes for fun gameplay. The nice graphics and music feel like just a lovely addition. I was going to say that this was the start of a string of excellent Capcom games based on Disney properties, but I almost forgot I covered Mickey Mousecapade in the 1988 video. Regardless, DuckTales is an excellent platformer that I fell in love with all over again, once I worked out how Scrooge's cane worked. I look forward to revisiting future Disney titles in future videos. It was interesting to work out how to play Fester's Quest. First off, autofire makes things a lot easier. With the amount of health the enemies have, tapping would be a nightmare. Once that's out of the way, it's getting used to where to go and using the game's inventory system. I thought I'd have to find a light source power-up to explore the sewers, and while that's true, it's not like in other games where finding the light will allow all dark areas to be lit. The bulbs have to be equipped in the menu and then activated in the dark. It's the same with the keys to get into houses and the money at the hot dog cart to regain health. I never found out what the TNT or vice grips were used for, but I have some ideas. It's just that the enemies are too relentless, and while the boomerang gun upgrade is better, its curves make it difficult to hit an enemy popping right up in your business. I thought the music was fun, and the intro made me smile, especially the rendition of the Addams Family theme. Let me play it for you now. I can see the problems with Fester's Quest that make it difficult to play, but there's something at the core of it that works for me. And based on the game's negative reputation, that was a surprise. This is more a reflection on me than the game, but I found myself chuckling at some of the joke answers given while playing Hollywood Squares. For those unfamiliar, this is a game show where comedians are asked questions while sitting in a giant tic-tac-toe board. After a joke answer, they give what they think is the real one, and then the contestants agree or disagree with their answer. If they're right, they get the square. If they're wrong, their opponent gets it. It's such an odd idea for a game show, and an even odder adaptation for an NES game. The characters are goofy looking. The images stay the same, but the names change from game to game. As this is a trivia game from the late 80s, obviously the questions about pop culture and current events are going to be difficult for a modern audience to understand, rather than someone playing in 1989. But I found a little bit of thinking, and my general knowledge got me all the way to picking a key in the final round and failing to win a car. I found myself engaged by the questions, and while yes, I did roll my eyes or groan at some joke answers, others had me appreciating the writing. Like most home trivia games, the more one plays, the more they become familiar with all the questions and answers. But at least when the questions are new, I think this would be fun to play with friends, family, or by oneself. Definitely the best game show adaptation I've played on the NES so far. Who knew that all a successful game show adaptation needed was an attempt at humor? Sometimes a game takes a little while to show you why it's special. King's Knight rose above my expectations. I saw the simple visuals and that it was a shoot-'em-up and sighed. I thought it looked like yet another older Famicom game finally ported over to the NES, but as I began to play it, my impressions of it changed. Most of the environment is destructible. It's where the power-ups lie, but the destruction also releases hidden enemies. The up arrow heals, but there are down arrows that damage. I'm pretty sure the boots increase speed, and either the orb or the double helix upgrades your weapon. Water is introduced, and in an odd twist, movement becomes more slippery, but it's cool how you can jump onto tufts of land. The game also likes to randomly make holes in the floor or cause barriers to appear. My first death was in the barrier maze. I didn't adjust to traveling the right way quick enough, and my knight was crushed. Then something interesting happened. I started with a new character in a new location. Because my character looked like a zombie or ghost, and the place had a graveyard feel, I thought I had a chance to shoot my way out of the underworld. I even opened up a bonus stage with a boss. Well, I clear this area, and it says my wizard is now level 12, before loading up a new character in a new zone. I died a couple more times, and each time the game started with more new characters in more new zones. Now the gameplay was the same through all of this, but it did seem like each new attempt was ramping up the difficulty, but I was gobsmacked by the variety of what was going on. I don't know when the characters and palette swaps would have ended, what leveling up my character means, or even how many characters there are to go through before game over, but King's Knight captured my imagination with its possibilities despite its older presentation. Okay, with an official license, you'd think this would be the best damn gridiron game on the NES. Well, here's the problem. It actually might be, but I can't tell because the plays must be in the manual. Before each down, I press directions on the D-pad and the A and B buttons, and the game starts with the formation. I found it near impossible to change which guy I'm controlling, and when I did have a clear throw to an open receiver, my quarterback would often chuck the ball in the other direction. Heck, there wasn't even a guy to receive the kickoff. Every gridiron game I've played so far has the guy automatically catch the kickoff. Here, they're all just waiting around until the ball lands. And because I can't choose the player closest, I have this huge trek to the ball and get tackled near my own goal. Defense fared a little better, but still, not knowing how to switch players or having the game choose automatically as the play continued made this highly frustrating. I mean, sure, I should have read the manual. I do that when I can't work out what a game wants from me. But I think I had a stubborn streak of trying to work things out myself on this one, despite clearly needing assistance. So yeah, NFL football might be a great gridiron game and the issues were all on me, or it really is just butts. I remember playing this a lot in the arcades. It was one of those brawlers that had a steady influx of weapons to pick up and use, and it looked great for the time. The NES version is what it is. I think it looks and sounds fine for the hardware. The gameplay is standard brawler fare. You have a punch button, a kick button, a jumping attack when both are pressed, and you can pick up weapons when they drop from enemies. Knives and assault rifles and explosives, oh my! The rifle is interesting because you can use it as a melee weapon when you run out of ammo, but the range is terrible. The main issues I had is that it's difficult to know when you're on the same plane as the enemy and if your attacks are going to connect. The reason this is a problem is the enemy just has to graze you and you lose half of one of your health bars. Stronger hits, weapons, or getting hit by a motorcycle takes away even more health. While I thought certain parts were cool, like the boss fight, and while I think it'd be fun with a buddy, I'd prefer to go play Double Dragon or Bad Dudes. There was a Sesame Street game about numbers made for young children, so of course, there's gotta be one about letters. It's got the same strong production value, although this seems to have less features than the numbers one. It's just a Ferris wheel with letters on it, and when the correct letter is facing the ground, you press a button to drop it. The D-pad changes speeds on the wheel from normal to fast to slow-mo and back again. Once the bell has been rung, there's a celebration. I'll show you it once I finish talking about the other game option. It's a simplistic version of Pipe Dream where you have to get Rubber Ducky to Ernie by choosing the direction the next tile travels in. It's low stress and free form, but I thought it might be a bit complicated considering the target audience for these games. Anyway, here's the celebration I got for correctly matching capital letters. I don't think I've died in any NES game as much as I died playing Sky Shark. It's a combination of issues. I think the hitbox on my plane must be larger than I think it is. So many times I could have sworn I dodged incoming fire, but the game said no! Then there's often so much happening on the screen that dodging explosions and keeping track of where all the enemy planes are flying is enough to die to a stray something or other. Finally, there's just bad luck. I'd spawn in an area where I was boxed in, or find myself in a situation that there was no getting out of. At least the game is generous with lives and continues. Oh, and while a weapon power-up is useful, the red planes have to all be shot down to acquire it. And while that was easy enough at the start of the first level, anything later had too much going on to be able to successfully power up. I think the game wants the player to use bombs strategically, but even that was only a small reprieve. I like the way Sky Shark looks, and the music is banging, but my god, this is absurdly difficult. So much so that I wonder if this is a Bayou Billy situation, where the difficulty was ramped up to a ridiculous degree for the US market. I heard that track over and over and over and over again. This is a detective game that seems to be about searching buildings for items to gain access to other places. I found plenty of items, but nowhere to use them. I like that you can enter a building, talk to someone, and find out if there's anything worth searching for in its rooms. But near the end of my time with the game, I couldn't find the item that I was told was there. Every now and then a siren would blare and the weasels would appear, a couple of them being smushed by a car. Other than that, the game tricks you into losing a life early on by walking under a plant outside Eddie's office. I bet this game runs on a lot of cartoon logic, and I wonder if I actually get to use the punch that Eddie had elsewhere, or if the majority of the game is just investigation. It's interesting, but I bet this is not what kids were expecting when they got their hands on a Who Framed Roger Rabbit game. Okay, how did a game about gambling set in a casino get released in the US, especially with the cutesy anime visuals? It says the game includes poker and blackjack, but I was only ever able to find blackjack tables. I had to walk right down to the bottom of the casino to beat Lisa before I could work my way up to the top. Bloody Lisa. The game does that thing where every time you talk to someone, it interrupts the music, which then restarts once the conversation is over. I always find blackjack and poker fun and had a good time playing it here. I wonder if the game is geared towards higher bets. I started off by betting the minimum and getting trounced, but when I started betting more and taking more risks, they paid off more often than not. The deck is shuffled after every few hands, so anyone adept at counting cards could definitely use that to their advantage. I would have liked to try poker, but as a collection of casino games set inside what feels like a JRPG wrapper, in terms of walking around and talking to people to gain hints about where to go and what to do, I found it unoffensive. Well, aside from the idea of exposing gambling to children. Well, it's better than Nintendo Soccer. I think they blew their budget on that goal animation. It is the name of the game after all. Goal! The isometric viewpoint makes it difficult to travel with the ball or chase an opponent. The B button swaps the player you're controlling, but it never seemed to choose the one I needed to stop the opposing team. I mean, it takes a second to understand who the new player you're controlling is, never mind trying to take the ball. I have no idea how the hit detection works. Sometimes I was just run through, or the ball was taken off me out of nowhere. Even though it seemed the game was in the computer's favor, as they actually were programmed to know what they're doing, there was a back and forth tussle for ball control a lot of the time. It was rare to be able to race across the field without worrying about anyone else. I even got a goal, but the opponent got more. I think with time to learn the nuances of the system, this could be a great football game, especially playing against a friend. The opening cinematic of Godzilla Monster of Monsters took over 2 minutes. That's a fifth of my game time. Ah well, the music and visuals aren't too shabby. Gameplay could be better. It's really cool to get to wreak havoc with both Godzilla and Mothra. I wasn't expecting a hexagonal board where you move the monsters you control towards the monsters the enemy controls. Each space on the board is a level where you walk or fly through a few screens while being bombarded by enemies. And sometimes there's a boss fight. I found it much easier to play as Mothra, but Godzilla was more fun. Each monster has a special attack that's used by pressing the start button. Godzilla's attack is of course his breath, while Mothra sheds either her wings or scales onto the enemy. Some foes are hiding in rock, and some rocks can be destroyed. There's health hiding in the rocks. I got to fight Ghidorah before I stopped playing. He pinned Mothra to the bottom of the screen a lot of the time, but without damaging her. Eventually, I got him to back off and continued firing my scales. Victory was mine. Godzilla Monster of Monsters is a neat idea, and the presentation and gameplay is interesting enough, but I just found the act of attacking my way through these enemy-soaked screens more tedious than anything else. A shame. The big lizard deserves better. I thought I'd enjoy this a lot more than the Jeopardy release from last year. If it's a version meant for kids, that means I might know the answers to most of the questions. This is true, but look at the categories. Jaws? Police work? Addams Family I get, but I still got plenty of questions I didn't know. Okay, look at the animation that plays when my character buzzes in or gets an answer right. It never failed to make me laugh. In my head, every time this happened, he went, "Yay!" And look at poor Larry. The dude has double pink eye. Sally seems to be alright. I think this is a solid rendition of Jeopardy geared towards younger players. I still think some of the trivia knowledge needed is wild, but that's the whole draw of the game show in the first place, isn't it? What do you think, Dave? Yay! This is like Nobunaga's Ambition. But while I found that game easy enough to at least start moving troops and fighting, Romance of the Three Kingdoms proved more opaque. I liked the music a lot more, but I really had no idea what the heck I was doing. I trained my troops, I made an alliance, and in the middle of one round, a flood washed away some people. Whose? Hard to say. I didn't even know which sections of the map were mine. Now yes, giving each game only 10 minutes puts me at a disadvantage when approaching a strategy game, especially when I only read the manual if I can't figure out how to play myself. But saying all that, I still think I'd prefer to play Nobunaga's Ambition. It's great that the NES is home to some strategy titles though. Fans of the novel might have loved this, but it's just not a genre that lends itself to this format of examining NES games, or more to the point, to my personality. What's with dogfighting games making you take off and land? I managed to pull off a landing, but only once. Aside from that, I found the view of the cockpit and the horizon kind of nauseating. I liked the music, and the planes looked cool. I liked locking onto an enemy fighter and seeing it explode after I shot a missile at it. Level 2 is in a whole new biome, but the enemy missiles are much harder to avoid. That's what ultimately was my downfall. That and trying to land. I like this one more than Top Gun, but that's not saying much. a memory of playing this game on New Year's Eve at my friend Dan's house. We somehow got a cutscene of Curly screaming while hitting himself in the head with the palm of his hand. That became an in-joke for years. I didn't get to see this remembered animation. The Three Stooges is a minigame collection. You randomly choose jobs each day to earn money. I got to act as an orderly, following a patient around and collecting all the red crosses. I failed throwing pies at the upper crust, how ironic, and the game kept having me play the cracker eating competition. Something is in the soup stealing the crackers. Each time one is stolen, we are taken back to this ugly visage cursing whatever is doing it. The games all play well enough, but they go on for too long, and I wish I could have seen the boxing. As a licensed title and a minigame collection to boot, the Three Stooges ain't too shabby. This is a stock standard shoot 'em up. It must be from a few years back in the NES's life cycle, judging from the look of it. It's also frustratingly difficult. The main reason is the helicopter moves so slowly. The screen is wide and enemies can zoom in on either side of it, but it takes an eternity to cross from left to right and vice versa. This also means that avoiding a torrent of incoming fire feels more like luck than skill. And of course, in true NES fashion, each stage exponentially ramps up the difficulty. I got to stage 3 thanks to a bunch of continues, but look at this mess. There's even homing rockets. Sometimes I was able to get into a zen state and have a good time dodging. The speedier sections had moments of that, when the movement of the screen wasn't making me ill. Another issue is that I never knew which enemies would drop power-ups. They're a real game changer, and they stack, but if you get hit, you'll lose them all. I never knew when the next one was coming, and often when I made a mad dash to collect said power-up, it opened me up to enemy fire. Maybe this is meant to be played 2-player, so you can each cover half of the screen, but in single player, I was not enjoying myself. What did they do to poor Vanna White? More like Vanna Green? Haha, jokes. Anyways, this is the same as the version of Wheel of Fortune I covered in my 1988 video. I didn't like that one, and I dislike this one for the same reasons. Having no stand-ins for the player really loses something compared to the other game shows I've covered, like Jeopardy or Hollywood Squares. I played through a whole game, even winning a new stereo system at the end. Oh, if only. This would be somewhat entertaining with 3 players in the same room, but as a solo experience, I felt it just as lacking as the previous version. I have memories of loving 720 Degrees in the arcades. When I booted up the NES port, I was disappointed. Sure, it's been like 30 years since I last saw the game, but it had to have looked better than this, right? Well, I took a quick trip to YouTube, and my memory was right. The arcade version looks how I remember it. Of course, presentation is just one aspect, so how does this version of 720 Degrees play? It's okay. Like Skate or Die or California games, I had no idea how to score on the halfpipe, but the downhill sections were easy enough to fumble my way through. You can buy upgrades to your board and safety gear, and you have to get to the next event before the timer ticks down, or the Spectre of Death will find you. I remembered the open world more than anything, being able to pull off tricks and avoid hazards while finding your way to the next event. That was also cooler in the arcade version. 720 Degrees is the best pure skating game I've played on the NES so far, but sadly, that's not a high bar to cross. Even I could ollie over it. How's that for a skating reference? I'm one of those guys that thinks Tetris is the best video game ever made. It's not even close to my favorite, mostly because I'm not that good at it, but I just can't think of a better example of the platonic video game. It's simply designed and easy to understand how to play, but takes a long time to master. It's endlessly replayable, and it easily gets a player into a flow state. I had to stop myself playing to write this script. I had the cartridge on my NES, I had it on my Game Boy, I had it on my PC, and in the 90s I used to play 8-player Tetranet with strangers over IRC. Years ago on a defunct site I helped run called Gaming Momentum, I wrote a 3,000-word article exploring why I think it's such a good game. I think it has to do with the 4-block tetrominos and the size of the play space. I was able to find versions of Tetris that used 3-block tetrominos and 5-block tetrominos. They were fun for a minute or so, but didn't have the pull of Tetris. One was too simple, the other too complex. It's amazing that adding or removing one block alters the game so significantly. It's almost like a flow state itself, that middle ground between boredom and frustration. This version of Tetris is solid. It's got 3 pieces of music to choose from, nice color, the controls are responsive, and there's 2 game modes. Tetris has come a long way since then. I watched a YouTube video a while back explaining the design differences between modern Tetris games and the originals, but this version, simple as it may be, still holds the core of what makes the game so endlessly engaging. Another Zapper game? To the Earth has the opposite problem I've been having with Zapper games through emulation. Most of the games have little challenge because I'm able to use a mouse and easily zip around the screen to shoot. There have been exceptions, but mostly that's the case. To the Earth comes at you fast. Too fast. I couldn't shoot the 4 ships flying past at the start of the game. Eventually, I was able to shoot some of the ships flying at me, but that's before they started firing back. The missiles seem impossible to hit consistently. I swear, looking at the hitbox squares when the screen flashes, it would show a direct hit, but the game would say, nope. And To the Earth uses your life as your weapon energy. I learned quickly that I can't just fire with abandon, as the bar would deplete within seconds. Destroying an enemy ship will get some health back, as well as the pickups that appear for doing well, or at regular intervals in the level, but geez, I couldn't catch a break with those missiles. I had no chance reaching Earth. I couldn't even reach Uranus, which is where it felt like the game was shoving those missiles. If To the Earth had better hit detection and moved a little slower, I think this could be a fun time. The music and visuals weren't too shabby. Yeah, I wasn't going to end this section on that crude Uranus joke, so instead, you get a reference to it. A way to kill the vibe, Dave. I think this is the worst sports game I've played on the NES so far. At least the most unfair. Look at the score when I stopped playing. Look at it! All pro basketball is disorientating. When the player with the ball crosses half court to head to their basket, it fades to black so that the basket in question is at the top of the screen. This means play is uneven. When the transition happens, I don't know where my guys are, where the opposing team's guys are, where the people I need to pass to are, or if I can run right to the hoop. And if this wasn't bad enough, this is the first basketball game where hitting the throw button doesn't throw towards the player in the direction you're aiming. Multiple times I'd throw the ball from the foul line, and it would sail past everyone, going out of bounds, thus giving my opponents more opportunity to cream me. I never seemed to be able to change the player to the one nearest the ball. my whole team just running around like they didn't know what they were doing. And while it seemed the opponents could grab the ball from anywhere near me, I could never do the same to them. You know how when a game is frustrating you, you start to say things like, "Oh, of course that happened. Why would it be otherwise?" Is that just me? It's like I can recognize how funny it is that the game is unfair to such a ridiculous degree, but I'm too emotionally caught up in playing the game to laugh. Instead, I get mad or resign to my fate. Usually a combination. That was on full display playing all-pro basketball. The transition moving from half-court was bad enough, but the gameplay issues compounded my festering dislike towards playing the game. Not even the cool dunk animations could lift my spirits. Wow, this is like chess, but to take a piece you have to fight it on a battlefield. Technically, a weaker piece can win against a stronger one, especially if the stronger piece is damaged from a previous fight, but if you're relying on wearing your enemy down, you're going to run out of pieces. You also have to be strategic about what spells to use and when. There are insanely strong spells, such as reviving downed pieces, but I learned late in the game that each spell can only be used once. Damn. As I didn't know the capabilities of each creature and how to play the game, I made a lot of boneheaded decisions. In the fight sections, most creatures have a ranged attack, but it has a cooldown of a few seconds, and you have to have a good line of sight on your enemy. The CPU is great at lining up these shots. I was not. I lost a lot of good pieces that way. I think once a player knows what their troops can do, this could be a lot of fun either against the computer or a friend. I never understood what the 3 white squares in the middle of the board do, or what the reverse time spell accomplished, and I wonder if there are more complicated board layouts. Archon is one of those games whose potential I find fascinating, and from what little I played, it seems like the game could live up to it. I was excited when I first started playing the Battle of Olympus. It looks nice, there's fun music, and it feels like it's using a bit of the Zelda 2 formula. Then I kept going screen by screen, talking to townsfolk, telling me what is probably important information, but I had no clear goal or way forward. It's strange that there's so many monsters in each town I was visiting, having to protect myself as I traveled from house to house. I found most enemies annoying to kill, and they didn't drop enough health for my liking, or orbs, which I assume is currency. I found myself at a palace, but the lady there didn't want to talk to me. A couple people wanted me to prove that I was the legendary hero Dave, but I didn't know how. It feels like the Battle of Olympus is a giant interconnecting puzzle where the player has to upgrade their gear and travel to the right places in the proper order before anything exciting can happen. I like this for the potential of the type of game I think it could be, but I don't know if it'd be worth the effort to find out if I'm right or not. This is just a solid bowling game. Yes, it's true that the short music loop outstays its welcome all too soon, but I had a blast trying to work out how to get a blasted strike. You can pick from 4 players and choose the weight of the ball. You can position yourself in the lane and choose the angle and strength of your roll. It's all comprehensive. I don't think there's any physics to speak of, as I was able to replicate the same splits when trying to knock down the pins, but rudimentary as it may be, I had a fun time playing through 2 games of bowling. In real life, I'm a terrible bowler, so while my scores in championship bowling were abysmal, they're better than I can do on my own, so I'll take it. I think I like Cybernoid the Fighting Machine. I spent most of my playtime frustrated with it. You die in one hit, and the obstacles screen by screen are just so annoying to deal with. After a couple deaths, I realized that these asterisk-looking things weren't spikes to avoid, but power-ups to collect. Power-ups that offer a spinning shield or a reverse gun. Of course, this is one of those games where if you die, all the power-ups go away, but I was starting to see a way through. Then I got to this screen. I couldn't make it to the other side without that orange thing clipping me. What the heck was I to do? In desperation, I pressed select to see if I'd missed a mechanic, and yes, I had. I had multiple weapons and tools to choose from, including a shield. That got me through the orange onslaught with no issues. Suddenly, the game felt like it was possible to get through. I threw out these bouncer attacks in the next rooms, and they started destroying the crates blocking my way. It's just difficult to want to keep playing with that drone that's trying to pass itself off as ambient noise, alongside how many screens feel like a Kaizo ROM hack, killing you in ways you didn't see coming. You also have to hold up on the D-pad to stop the craft from letting gravity take its course, even though everything feels like it's floating in 0G. Maybe with save states, a lot of patience, and some music on in the background, I could make it to the end. What's fascinated me the most about Cybernoid the Fighting Machine is that despite all the frustration I had working out how to progress, and how annoying it can be to play, discovering that it's less an action title and more a puzzle game based around power-ups made me enjoy my time with it despite what I see as its many shortcomings. Dig Dug was always one of the more horrifying concepts in the annals of the arcade game. Plunging an air nozzle into enemies to blow them up like balloons until they pop. You could also crush them with falling rocks. Dig Dug 2 takes a different approach. Yes, we're still blowing up enemies like balloons, but instead of digging into the earth, here we're creating rifts in the soil to plunge entire cliffsides into the sea. It's f***ing awesome. I can't tell you the excitement and joy I felt when I worked out what the pegs were for and what happens when you create a rift across the land. What this does is turn Dig Dug into a puzzle game. Sure, you can run around and blow up the enemies, but the fun way is to figure out which cliffs to plunge into the sea in the right order to send the critters down with them. The first few levels illustrate this well, and I was mostly able to get through them without incident on each new attempt. Every now and then, I wasn't quick enough jumping off a plunging cliffside, or I'd get trapped by an enemy, but I was getting better. But as fun as the gameplay is in Dig Dug 2, I found the controls restrictive. Changing direction and aiming the nozzle took longer than I wanted it to. I think this emphasizes that the nozzle should be a last resort, and the core gameplay is all about the puzzle element about the right order to sink the land into the sea. By level 5, I found I needed to coax the critters onto the right piece of land before sinking it, or else they'd swarm me. I still don't fully understand which parts of the map are going to break off, but I imagine it becomes second nature the more one plays. Honestly, the premise and enjoyment of the design alone makes this one of the better games I played in 1989. Two Power Pad games for the price of one. Short Order is a memory game. Customers come in and you have to step on the Power Pad in the right order to give them the ingredients they asked for. The sequence gets more complicated after each successful burger made. It's a fast food version of that electronic game Simon I remember from when I was a kid. Eggsplode is a bunch of chickens trying to lay their eggs with foxes running around. For some reason, the foxes are setting bombs under the chickens. tapping the right number on the pad that corresponds to the chickens will destroy the bomb. But if you accidentally crack a real egg, that's bad. Both games are among the best Power Pad games I've played so far, but as I've mentioned many times already, when talking about the low bar of games on offer for the NES's peripherals, that's not saying much. Let's move on. I think I like the first Wizards and Warriors better. At least the knight didn't look as goofy. It is kind of the same game though. Everything is going to damage you, but instead of a forest of shifting perspective, we are scaling a cliffside. There's a merchant, plenty of keys, chests, and magic spells to equip, but beware because the spells have limited use. I found a spell which created a protection orb, and the slumber spell made the birds move in slow motion, which was a relief, cause f*** those birds. I like how there are slopes that when landed on take you back down the mountain like a game of chutes and ladders. There are caves full of imps, which will destroy your health, and there's plenty of hidden areas full of gems. Finding treasure is always a delight. The goal in the first level is to get the golden egg, and just reaching it without hitting a slope took me longer than expected. After retrieving it, an eagle took me to the clouds, which is where I left things after bouncing around on their fluffy surfaces. Oh, and look at this weird humanoid thing. I just wanted to point it out. Iron Sword feels less special than the original Wizards and Warriors. It's still punishing, but through limitless continues and clear goals, I think a player could have a good time. It also feels like a game where knowledge is key. Once you know where the items are and what spells are good for which areas, I'd imagine you'd breeze through this. But I guess that's the same for most games, isn't it? Well, the music's not bad. I think this is a game of driving as fast as you can to reach the goal within the time limit. What makes matters difficult is that I think I needed to put my one skill point in shield instead of gas, engine, missile, or laser, just so I could make it more than 30 seconds into the level. Cars are coming at you constantly. The red ones will fire at you, and hitting anything will take shield off and slow you down. Being able to hold auto fire on the weapon helped a lot, but it doesn't feel like there's much strategy aside from picking the right skill point to put into your car at the beginning, the skill to avoid everything on the road, and maybe some luck. It kinda reminds me of Spy Hunter, but from behind the windshield. Viewers of the previous videos know that I wasn't much of a fan of Spy Hunter either. Don't you hate when you're getting used to a game, rising to its challenges, and then it throws something at you that you have no idea how to get past? Meet the spiked wall of death in RoboCop. As a platformer, RoboCop's not too bad. Walk forward and stop to punch goons every few seconds. There are sections of the game where you take your gun out and use that to dispatch the goons. There are batteries which increase the level timer, and P-drinks for health. The gun shoots in diagonals as well, so when I knelt down to shoot the dogs, often I would shoot diagonally down at them first. The first boss is a Rock'em Sock'em robot that can only be defeated by punching, and it shows up twice more in level 2. Auto fire makes this easier as the robot gets caught in a punch loop. I didn't have a bad time with RoboCop. If it wasn't for that spiked wall, I would have enjoyed seeing what was coming next. Oh, and the speaking animation between levels had me laughing out loud. Enjoy it in all its splendor before we move on. I've never played Shadowgate, but its reputation precedes it. I grew up playing Sierra adventure games, and even by their at times unfair standards, Infocom's games had an even harsher reputation. Not to mention that playing a point-and-click adventure game on a controller is less than an ideal experience. It felt like I was primed to have a bad time. So color me surprised by how enjoyable I found the writing of the opening text scroll, the music, and the overall presentation. The UI is laid out nicely, and while the cursor is a bit clunky, I was able to interact with the world easily enough. Now if the game requires quick movement from inventory to screen later on, then things will be a problem, but for now, it's workable. Unfortunately, I got stuck on the first puzzle. I had no idea how to unlock the 2 doors on the second screen. I thought I had tried everything. I looked up a walkthrough and found out that the skull above the first door to the castle hid a key. Oh, so it's going to be that kind of game. Once I got going, I enjoyed the exploration, and I also enjoyed that when I died, the game loaded me back into the previous room. This makes things less of a headache and encourages experimentation by the player. I like the tone and overall vibe of Shadowgate. If I was to play it, I'd probably want to check out the PC version so I can use a mouse, but this is a great port. I just wonder how far into the game one has to get before they realize Shadowgate's reputation is there for a reason. I respect the idea of simulation games, but I think out of all possible genres, they're the most done a disservice by a 10-minute time limit, and my stubbornness in trying to work out how to play these games without reading the manual. I also find the knowledge barrier is often too high to reach a point where I know enough to have fun within the simulation. I imagine for those interested in a submarine war game in 1989 on their home consoles, this would be incredible. It didn't take me too long to work out how to use the basic controls and check the different stations of the submarine. I just didn't know what the game wanted from me. In both cases, my submarine was lost at sea. It's cool that you can switch to the interior of the sub, but come on, are you telling me this vessel is manned by only one bearded seaman? No wonder I couldn't work anything out. Moving on. Well, this was absolutely wretched. Some games just don't feel good to play, and this is one of them. There's no impact or friction when moving around the game world. You bump off of enemies like a pinball, and it's easy to get stuck in something and have your health obliterated. I should be thankful that health drops are plentiful, but it's a necessity considering the unending onslaught of all these weird things attacking the X-Men. You choose 2 X-Men per level. If you don't have a friend playing, the CPU takes control of the second player, and they'll likely die within a couple of minutes by walking into something. The X-Men come in 2 varieties, those that shoot projectiles and those that punch. You want projectiles to destroy the enemies long before they touch you. This makes half the roster useless. I had flashes of interest, like using these teleport pads to make my way around this maze, but the act of playing the game is just so dull and annoying that it makes me sad. The X-Men deserve better. Now this is an interesting game to end the year on. Check out the music and title card of the intro. This is an action RPG. It's got the traveling back to town to heal of a dragon warrior, but it has the combat of a clunkier Zelda. I'm sure once the levels, gear, and magic spells enter the picture, things feel a bit better. But in the early parts of the game, the novelty and production value are what carries it. I'm sure I've seen the film Willow. It's one of those quintessential 80s fantasy movies that I probably saw during my childhood. Alas, unlike, say, The Never-Ending Story, I have no memory of it. Your character is prophesized to help save the world, so your village has prepared magic and a sword for you. First port of call is to head to a neighboring village to get rid of the demon plaguing them. On the way, I encountered slimes, a boar, and flying skulls that rise out of the ground. It's all too easy to be hit by the enemy as the movement isn't that smooth, nor is the arc or stab of the sword. The game also has different music for talking to people, so the talk music and the village music are always interrupting each other's flow. I've now played a few RPGs inspired by Zelda, and this feels like a further evolution of the genre, even if it is just aping the top-down view and real-time combat. I remember spending some time playing Chrysalis, which is a similar action RPG on the NES, and might have taken inspiration from Willow, but that's not getting covered until the next video. One thing I love about this project is being able to track when certain gameplay styles started, and how they evolved as we moved through the years of the console. Willow might not be a great game to finish 1989 on due to how it plays, but in the wider context of NES releases, it at least gives me something to think about. It's that glorious time of year again, ladies and gentlemen, the arbitrary ranking. I finally settled on a decent ranking method in the 1988 video, so I'm replicating it here. For those of you who haven't watched the last video, and you really should, I play each game for around 10 minutes and give it a ranking out of 5 stars. I think to myself, this game feels like a low 3-star, or hey, this one's a high 4. Then I look at the games already rated and decide where the new game fits in the hierarchy. As more and more games get ranked, my memory becomes foggier, so where to place each new game becomes more and more based on vibes. That's why I call it arbitrary. The goal with these rankings is to enjoy which games make it to this section, rather than which games get higher or lower ranking than others. Well, at least until we get to the top 10, then it's on. Another part of the 1988 ranking that I'm continuing here is choosing how many games to rank. In that video, I split the 3-star group in half, so anything in the top half of the 3 stars through the 4s and all the way to the 5s made the list. In 1988, that ended up being 30 games. For this video, I covered 96 games, so I was expecting a much larger group to rank. But when I cut the 3 stars in half, I ended up with only 40. I say only 40, but that's still a hell of a lot of games to get through, so let's get ranking. To start us off at number 40, Hollywood Squares. We're starting off with the best game show adaptation I've played so far. Adding corny jokes to a trivia game was enough to win me over. At number 39, Guerrilla War. A better version of Akari Warriors, with cool power-ups, the ability to destroy chunks of level, and heaps of NES slowdown. Number 38, Stealth ATF. I think I just like the dogfighting in this one. That I was able to make a successful landing, if only once, puts this above Top Gun, and I mostly enjoyed Top Gun. Number 37, The Black Bass. While I'm not a fan of fishing in video games, I can appreciate the laid-back atmosphere the Black Bass brings to the NES. Number 36, Ultima III Exodus. I'm not only surprised that such a complex, for-the-time CRPG was ported to the NES, but that it plays so well all these years later. Number 35, Track and Field 2. Track and Field 2 gets a boost because I had the cartridge back in the day, but in terms of presentation and variety of events, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better sports minigame collection on the console. Number 34, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Sure, the game is notoriously difficult, and it's not the game that fans of TMNT wanted back in the 80s. But I like how each turtle brings their own strengths, and that the levels are designed around switching characters to make it through unscathed. Number 33, Strider. Different than the arcade version, but visually appealing and fun to play. I just wish I hadn't gotten stuck. Number 32, RoboCop. Can I put a game on this list just for its lip syncing animation? Yes, I can. It's my list. I can do what I want. It's a solid enough platformer too, especially for a licensed game. Number 31, Cobra Triangle. You can't fault Rare for their creativity. The variation of levels and power-ups makes Cobra Triangle exciting to play through, despite how difficult it can be to get through some of the stages. Number 30, P.O.W. Prisoners of War. Of course, it's not going to be as good as the arcade version, but P.O.W. is still a solid brawler. Number 29, The Guardian Legend. I think I like games that change playstyles from level to level. The Guardian Legend changes from a shoot-'em-up to a Metroid-y version of Gauntlet, and then back again. Add to that decent presentation, and I'm on board. Number 28, Archon. Speaking of board, B-O-A-R-D, Archon is a turn-based board game that's like chess, if the pieces fought each other in real-time combat, and the players could cast magic spells to affect the outcome of the game. Number 27, Flying Dragon The Secret Scroll. I like the idea of Flying Dragon The Secret Scroll, responding to Simon Says inputs to simulate a cool-looking martial arts fight. Sadly, the stiff controls and kung fu-esque sections damper its potential. Number 26, Casino Kid. I have qualms about teaching kids how to gamble, but I do enjoy poker and blackjack. And I like the idea of walking around the casino floor and talking to patrons and dealers. Number 25, The Battle of Olympus. One of many games this year using a Zelda 2 or a Simon's Quest style for their RPG or platformer. I like the look of this one, but I could never figure out where to go or what the game wanted me to do. Number 24, Willow. I like the presentation more than the gameplay, but I was struck by how immersive I found fighting enemies and exploring the roads outside the village. Number 23, Nobunaga's Ambition. It's not my favorite strategy game of 1989, but I appreciate how this feels like a Total War game, and I'm sure that those that took the time to understand its nuances found the gameplay both rich and rewarding. Number 22, Desert Commander. This is my favorite strategy game of 1989. We didn't get Famicom Wars on the NES, and while Desert Commander feels like a different version of the same game, I'll take what I can get. Number 21, Tecmo Bowl. This might actually be my favorite gridiron game on the NES. It's more arcadey than simulation, which is what I like in my sports and driving games, and it reminded me of NFL Blitz. Top 20 now. We're well into 4-star and up territory. All the games from this point on I loved for one reason or another. Number 20, Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2. Although not as enjoyable as the first game, I liked the use of magic, slopes, and how it was easier to progress to the next level. Number 19, King's Knight. The surprise upon inhabiting a character upon each death and having them level up before changing characters again kept me guessing, even if the presentation and gameplay was less than stellar. Number 18, Air Fortress. Air Fortress is similar to the Guardian Legend in that it switches gameplay perspective midway through each level, but I think it's done a lot better here. Number 17, Championship Bowling. It's a fun bowling game, enough said. Number 16, Baseball Stars. By far the best baseball game I played on the NES. I wonder if it'll keep the crown as the years continue. Number 15, Gyruss. Those who watched the 1988 video know I'm a sucker for a solid arcade experience. And Gyruss reminded me of Tempest, but a Tempest I'd enjoy playing. Take that, Tempest. Number 14, Monster Party. I'm shocked by how the level changes once you get halfway through it. Otherwise, it's a solid platformer with interesting creature design and a bizarre story. Number 13, Legacy of the Wizard. I was fascinated by Legacy of the Wizard. Different class choices with different benefits, a large dungeon to explore, and plenty of strange items to uncover and learn how to use as one makes their way through the labyrinth. I don't know if it could keep my interest the whole way through, but this was one of those games that I'd never even heard of when I started this project that I ended up appreciating, which is part of the reason I'm doing all this in the first place. Number 12, Bad Dudes. Are you a bad enough dude to be number 12 on this list? Yes. This is the best brawler of 1989. Ignore that there weren't that many brawlers in 1989. Number 11, Shadowgate. I guess I'm still a sucker for a point-and-click adventure game, even if they are trickier to play on a console. I enjoyed the writing and atmosphere of Shadowgate, as well as death only kicking me back to a previous screen. Okay folks, we've reached the top 10. These are the heavy hitters of 1989 as chosen by me, Dave. The ranking now becomes a little less arbitrary. Number 10, Dragon Warrior, the JRPG that started it all. It still has enough charm that I want to play through it, to fully experience the game that kickstarted a genre I still adore. Number 9, Dig Dug 2. I'm not really a fan of Dig Dug, but my goodness, is sinking land into the sea in Dig Dug 2 a fun time. More puzzle game than action game, but enough arcade skill is still needed to salvage a bad decision or avoid a wayward enemy. Number 8, Super Dodgeball. Using super moves to throw dodgeballs at the head of an opposing team from a different country has never been so enjoyable. I'm not as good at the game as I once was, but I still had a great time playing Super Dodgeball. Number 7, Marble Madness. Not only a novel idea for a video game, but wonderful execution as well. I normally don't like isometric games because I find the way perspective is mapped to the D-pad confusing, but Marble Madness is an exception that remains a joy to play. Number 6, Adventures of Lolo. What a great puzzle game. Dangerous enemies used in ingenious ways. I wish it didn't have a life system, but solving each level and gaining an understanding of how each creature interacts with Lolo and the level makes this worth playing. Finally, we reach the top 5. The cream of the crop, oh yeah! As with previous years, I bet astute viewers will guess which games top the list, but can you guess which order they're in? Let's find out. Number 5, Ninja Gaiden. Not as hard as its reputation may have you believe, but that's only if you're paying attention to what power-ups the game gives you before each new section. It almost doesn't matter if it's difficult, because the visuals, including the cutscenes, the music, and the act of playing Ninja Gaiden is still so impressively enjoyable all these years later. Number 4, Faxanadu. There's something about the atmosphere of Faxanadu, with its world tree, yellow hues, and design of its enemies, that makes me want to learn more about this world while growing my power to help save it. I really should put aside some time to play through both this and Dragon Warrior. Number 3, DuckTales. They say life is like a hurricane in Duckburg. But in DuckTales, we're going everywhere but. I love the uses of the cane to pogo on enemies and to golf swing objects to jump on. I love all the secret areas and treasure to find, and even when the game gets difficult, the look and music keep the vibe fun. Not just a great platformer, but one based off a TV cartoon. Well done, Capcom. Number 2, Tetris. Yep, what I said I think is the best video game of all time only gets the number 2 slot. Best doesn't mean favorite, but hey, number 2 isn't too shabby. Tetris is still endlessly replayable. It hits that sweet spot between boredom and frustration. And as I've never been that good at it, each right decision makes me happy until it all eventually spirals out of control. That Tetris is still being released on new consoles speaks to how foundational it is as a game. So, if it's not Tetris, what is my number one game of 1989? It's, pause for drumroll, Mega Man 2. For most of my 20s, when asked what my favorite game is, I'd always say Mega Man 2. I no longer think that's true, but I love my time with it here all the same. It's like gaming comfort food. I know the levels of music like the back of my hand. I love how overpowered the metal blades are. I love how you can choose which order to fight the robot masters in. And I love all the huge and colorful enemy sprites. Mega Man 2 just hits that sweet spot as a platformer and an audio-visual experience that takes me back to simpler times. When I think of the NES, Mega Man 2 is one of the games that defines the console for me. And that's why no other game could be number one for 1989. So, just like how Konami swept my rankings in 1988, Capcom does the same for 1989. They had 2 games in the top 5 and another 2 in the top 40. Aside from Capcom and HAL having 2 games in the top 20 each, every other game in the top 20 is by a different developer. Once we go back towards the top 40, we can see that Rare, SNK, and Konami all have multiple entries, as well as another developer called Another. I'm trying not to make a who's on first joke here. As in the 1988 video, Nintendo seems to be lagging on their own console. But by 1989, even though the NES was still taking off in North America, the Famicom was likely starting to wear out its welcome in Japan. So I have to imagine that aside from a couple heavy hitters we'll see in future videos, Nintendo were busy developing their console follow-up. Luckily, we still have plenty of other developers making fun and interesting games for the system. Now, let's head back to the couch where this 1989 NES journey will come to a close. The 1989 video is now coming to a close. What a project! What a year! Even looking at specific genres, you get a roller coaster of releases. For example, while 1989 had as many sports games as previous years, the quality was all over the place. I played the best baseball and gridiron games I've come across yet. But for every Tecmo Bowl, there's an NFL football. Basketball games couldn't catch a break. I thought they were all terrible this year. Golf and bowling fared better, but wrestling didn't. Moving away from sports, we had plenty of peripheral games. A couple Power Pad entries, a couple Zapper entries, and even a Power Glove game. I wasn't expecting much from any of them, and boy did I get it. RPGs started to blossom on the console. But aside from Dragon Warrior, they were all action hybrids. A lot of games were trying hybrid styles, changing up how they play stage to stage, or acting as minigame collections. We got a single heavy hitter from Nintendo, and what a landmark release that was, and multiple classics, or at least solid games from Capcom, Konami, HAL, Rare, and SNK. Despite a large amount of stinkers, 1989 had more than enough fantastic or interesting games to make me look back on the year fondly. Looking forward towards 1990 is even more daunting than it was for 1989. We went from 63 games in the 1988 video to 96, and the jump in releases to 1990 is even crazier. 1990 was the peak of the NES's popularity, so I'll have 167 games to play through. You heard that right, 167. That's almost a 75% increase. This video took over a year chipping away at it in the background as I prioritized other projects. So I make no promises for when the 1990 video will see the light of day, but just know I'll be working on it. If you'd like to keep track of how the 1990 video is going, along with all my other projects, why not head on over to my Patreon? You can sign up for free and read my monthly updates, where I talk about my project progress and what games I've been playing. There's also my weekly Monday Musings column that becomes available for everyone to read a week after it's published. If you have $3 a month you can throw my way, you'll get early access to the videos, get to read Monday Musings when it's published, and the ability to vote in the viewer polls. I think it's a good deal, so why not head on over and give it a look. And so we come to the end of another NES project. Thanks for taking this journey with me. I'd love to know your thoughts on any of the games I covered down in the comments. Do you have fond memories of any particular title? Was one of these games your favorite? Did you feel anything got snubbed in the rankings? Let me know below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, I hope you're all doing well, are enjoying your gaming, and are all having a wonderful day.